that okay if I take
Sure.
one of the, are they down here?
Right down here.
All right, here we go. Here we are. Thank you. All right, so welcome to everybody that's here in person. Welcome to everybody who's here online. This is the installment of the Catholic Intellectual Tradition series that is touching on hospitality and tradition, and how is this part of our Catholic intellectual tradition. And Sister Dianne Bergant is going to speak to us about dialogue. Now, in her biography, if you guys have read up on her accomplishments in her history as an academic, you'll see that she has worked for years on the Catholic-Jewish dialogue in Chicago. Is that correct? And then also she has traveled extensively throughout the globe and encountered peoples of all different backgrounds, cultures, and faiths. And I think you are a great witness to, I'm assuming, the hospitality, tradition, and dialogue. And we are all excited that you're here and grateful and looking forward to what you've got to say. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, good afternoon again. You can't hear me? All right. Put this right in the front here. Can you? I feel like an ad. Can you hear me now? Is that right? Okay. Oops. The first thing I want to do is hook myself up. Sorry. Okay, we'll try again. The first thing I want to do is make a couple of comments about how this particular Catholic intellectual tradition or value is described in the Marian Mission Guide. On Catholic campuses, of course the focus is Catholic campuses, but it's not limited to that. On Catholic campuses, hospitality is evident in terms of intellectual openness, as well as a welcoming attitude and action toward all, including those with whom we may disagree. Two very important words in that particular sentence. First of all, hospitality. I want to open up a little bit of the biblical understanding of hospitality, which is slightly different in the ancient Near Eastern world than our contemporary understanding of hospitality. In the ancient Near Eastern world, particularly in the Near East, I don't know if you know much about the map of the ancient world. Now, as you make fun of me, I would like to tell you, when I was a child, I went to art school down in Milwaukee, School of the Art. So you'll recognize my talent immediately. It's the ancient Near East. What do we have? This is the Mediterranean Sea. Here we have Egypt. Here, obviously, the Nile River. Here we have the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea, and this is the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now, again, it's important to understand the geography in order to understand what the biblical text is all about. This is by and large what is referred to as the Fertile Crescent. Everything around here is sand. It's a desert, all right? And this means that this is, as I said, Egypt, which is a superpower. This is Mesopotamia, which is either Babylonia or Syria, that kind of a superpower. And if this is the Fertile Crescent, then Galilee, Judea, or what we call ancient Israel and contemporary Israel as well, is right in the middle. So if there's any kind of trade or war, Mesopotamia pushes itself up the Fertile Crescent until it hits Egypt, which is pushing itself up the Fertile Crescent until it hits Mesopotamia. So we've got Israel, which is a very insignificant nation, right in the middle. Now, it's very helpful, and I would say necessary, to get just an overall understanding of the geography and also of the history. It's constantly at war, constantly, or being threatened with war. Now, also in the ancient Near Eastern world, because of how treacherous the land is, not simply the generation of civilization on the land, but the land itself. If there's any kind of travel, they don't have motels to stop at night. Consequently, there was a long-standing universal tradition that anybody traveling was granted hospitality. So if you've got merchants, if you have, except war, of course, if you have merchants, they would come into a little burg, let's say, or a little village, and the leader of the village would run out and invite a perfect stranger to come in and spend the night. And they would offer them housing and a meal, because they knew that if they ever traveled, the same kind of hospitality would be given to them. With us, we give hospitality to people we know. In the ancient world, they gave hospitality to people they didn't know. And even though it is a universal tradition, it's extraordinarily dangerous, because somebody comes knocking on the door, again, in the ancient world, even in today, somebody comes knocking on your door, and you don't know that person. Chances are you're not apt to say, well, come right in. How can you stay the night? Wait, I'll fix supper. And supper is always the best that I have to give, because the presumption is you get a good name because you care for them. And that goes around the ancient Near Eastern world. And therefore, when you are out, everybody knows that you are very generous, so they would be generous to you. That's how that particular notion of hospitality worked. However, there was always a possibility that the one knocking on the door is a potential enemy. And so you have to show welcome and eagerness, but not too welcome and not too eager. And the reason being, it's also dangerous for the traveler, because they're going into the home of a perfect stranger. And you don't know what's going to happen at night in a home of a perfect stranger. So there are stories where the expression that I use, there's a little dance that, happens before they really come into the house. There's a story that Abraham was in his tent, and strangers came through the desert. And Abraham hurried out and prevailed upon them to come in. And then you actually see, they can't be too eager to look like they want to come in, because that's dangerous. But they've got to be eager, because if they're not eager, that's dangerous. Or at least they look dangerous. It's a very dangerous world. But they have certain kind of practices that become everybody's practice, at least in that particular place in the world. So when we find hospitality in the scriptures, particularly in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament as well, every once in a while, it's not exactly the same as we have it. I mean, there's some things, of course, are the same. You know, room and board you give, but you give it to somebody you know, somebody whose trust you can depend upon, and who have gained your trust. Not in the ancient world. That's for the stranger. They're very concerned about strangers, because they too are strangers if they travel. All right, so that's the first thing, that we talk about hospitality, and that will come up this afternoon. The second one, let me read it again. On Catholic campuses, hospitality is evident in terms of intellectual openness. Certainly there must be openness. which is, they're using the word hospitality here to show the kind of attitude you might have toward somebody who's different. And that's what it says here. The Catholic University engages all cultures, ideas, and people in a spirit of respectful dialogue in the pursuit of deeper understanding. We are open to understand people and thinking that's not the same as ours. The Roman Catholic Church has a problem with this issue, that we have not been able to settle it. But we are struggling with it, and we have been struggling with it since the Second Vatican Council. And that is, we make a claim. And I'm not saying I don't believe this. I believe everything the Roman Catholic Church teaches, in case anybody wants to know. But it's the whole question of we claim that we have the whole truth. Not everybody has the whole truth, but we do. And we struggle with that because there is not a kind of openness that we have that other traditions may have toward us. So it's a sore spot in a theological conversation. Recognizing our foundation in the love of God and neighbor, the CIT, which is a Christian intellectual tradition, calls us to openness and warmth in scholarship, service, and all academic pursuits. At the heart of this really is, how do we deal with somebody who differs from us? Somebody of a different religious tradition, somebody of a different culture, somebody of a different race. This is intellectual, so it will be somebody who thinks different than we do. I remember the Second Vatican Council, the last session of the Second Vatican Council was in 65. Some of you remember and some of you don't. But that's not, when you think about a church that's 2,000 years old, from 65 is not a long time ago. All right, so it opened up. Before that, when I was a child, two families or two houses away from where I lived when I was a child was a family that had 3 children, and the family was 10 years older than my sister and I. And the girls were our babysitters, and they were Lutheran. And even as a child, I knew that they were better Lutherans than we were Catholics. They were very, very pious. And I come from a good Catholic family, but I would never call my family pious. But this was a very pious. So I struggled with that as a child, you know, that they were at least as good as we were and maybe better. And yet, if I ever went to their church, I could not participate. They could participate in our church, but I couldn't participate. And when the girls got married, we could go to the marriage, but we had to sit through it. There was to be no standing up. You didn't have to worry about not knowing the prayers. You couldn't even participate in the actions. That's how the church was before. That's how the Lutheran churches, other Christian churches were as well. But there's, in some ways, there's more of an openness, or, well, I'll just say more than, you know, an openness that some Christian traditions do not suffer with or struggle with in the same way as Roman Catholicism does. And we're always changing. We're always changing. Remember, faith is, theology is faith seeking understanding. ING, constant movement. We're constantly trying to understand more. So, the Christian intellectual tradition calls us to openness and warmth in scholarship, service, and all academic pursuits. Hospitality implies a true commitment to academic freedom. I would say freedom, all freedom. But for sure, because of what this particular set of values is, academic freedom, including a fair chance to be heard and an opportunity for dialogue. It's very important. The call to hospitality requires that people model civility in conversation, commitments, and priorities. So that's what this says about hospitality. So I'll be touching on that, even if I don't use that particular word. What I want to do this afternoon is limit myself to one particular biblical story that we find in the Gospel of Luke. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. It's a very well-known story, or it's a story that a lot of people think they understand. A lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Now, why would anyone want to test their theology, challenge their theology? Not too long ago, I was giving a lecture, and a student challenged what I was saying. So on the one hand, what was I going to do? Punch him in the nose? I mean, we talk about academic freedom. He had a different point of view. He didn't like mine. I wasn't crazy about his, but he didn't like my point of view. But openness means we listen to other people's point of view. Here Jesus is being tested. If you read the stories in the New Testament, in the Gospel, Jesus is constantly being tested by leaders, religious leaders of his time, called the lawyers. Lawyers were what we today would call theologians, people or scholars of the law. And the law is a religious law, longer, more extensive than the Ten Commandments, but it includes that. So it's people who are educated in the religious tradition who challenge what he says, which means that it's not that he's got a different religion, he's got a different understanding of the religion. If, as I said earlier, before at the time of the Second Vatican Council, and even yet today, the whole question about outside the church there is no salvation. I mean, I remember it from childhood. Outside the church, in order to be saved, you have to be a Roman Catholic. That was a position of the church. I doubt whether anyone except an extraordinarily traditional person would say that today. But we don't yet have clear understanding of how, to what extent a different understanding of certain things within the tradition. There was, I can't remember which talk, but after one of my talks, the president, Aaron Sadoff, asked a question, and it was about angels. And I said to him something to the effect, what do you mean by angel? Now, we've all seen pictures of angels. How do you understand that? Angel. There are two kinds of angels. One with adult bodies and one which are just baby heads with wings on. Christmas card angels. All right, so you've got adult bodies with large wings behind them, and usually they have a halo. What does that mean? Do you have them in your closet? Are there such thing as angels? And if we say yes, then where are we? And don't tell me they're up in heaven, because heaven is not in that direction. Mars might be, but not heaven. Heaven is here or there within us. So we have within the Roman Catholic Church, if you know anything about the tradition of the Roman Catholic Church, anything at all, chances are it's an interpretation of something else, because that's most of what we know. Our prayers are an interpretation of something that is extraordinarily profound, but what the interpretation is not only profound. So anyway, I said to him, I said, what do you mean by angel? And then I can't remember exactly what he said, but when the right words came out, I said, there it is. And what he said was it had to do with the presence of God. whatever he said. But as soon as he said presence of God, I said, that's it. And then he knew exactly what I was talking about. When we talk about angels, we're talking about some kind of, I would use the word mysterious, but we've all got different interpretations of what mysterious means. It's some kind of a religious presence. It's a presence of care, a presence of care, protection, deliverance, as messenger sending. It's much more, less about what it looks like than what it stands for. Same thing as well, soul. What are we talking about when we talk about a soul? Just think about that for a minute. And where, if you have one, and our tradition, Christian tradition says we have a soul, where is it? Ask any surgeon, did you ever find one? And he'd think, go back home and get some rest, is what he would say to you. What are we talking about when we talk about soul? There is so much that we talk about all the time that it would behoove us to sit down sometimes and ask ourselves the question, when we talk about that, when I talk about that, what are we talking about? And it's not so mysterious or crazy, because there are a lot of things that are spiritual and not religious that are in that same boat. For example, love. We all know what love is. Describe it. Define it. When you talk about love, what are you talking about? Palpitations of the heart? That's an illness. What are you talking about? Sweats? Well, you can have sweats from running around the block or for any other kind of energetic kind of activity. What are we talking about? There are some kind of spiritual. When we use the word spiritual, we're not always talking about religious. We're talking about something that's not material. There's so much about us that's spiritual. Fear. We all know what fear is. Try to describe it. We say it's like. I don't want to know what it's like. I want to know what it is. And I haven't met anybody who can adequately, from my point of view, describe what these things are. But we know it. We know it when we're scared to death. We know it when we're in love. We know it when we're mad, angry, when we feel betrayed. Those are all things we know, but you can't get your hand on them. And nobody can tell you when you're going through it that you're not. You know when you're going through that. The same thing with things that are religious, like angels. It stands for something. An angel stands for something. That thing around the head, what we call the halo, it stands for something. It's a kind of, if there was anybody who actually had one, they would probably have some kind of a disease, if there was anything. But it stands for something. Just like a ring on your finger stands for something. And on which finger and which hand, it stands for something. So that's what happens, that we have in religion as well. So many things stand for something. And all we do, unfortunately, is get hooked on the thing and don't ask the deep question, what do we mean by when we say that? What do we mean by when we say it? So all of this, and all I did was read a couple of words. Just then a lawyer stood up and tested Jesus. So Jesus had a different interpretation. Now, I happen to have been born and raised in Wisconsin. I have an attachment to that particular state. And we do. We claim and joyfully claim where our attachments are. I have a very good friend who is from Trinidad, and her attachment is not Wisconsin. And she's not crazy about Wisconsin winters. So we have our own attachments as well, and they are valid as well. So when we talk about something, we always want to ask when we're talking about faith or religion, what does that mean? What does it mean? When you use that language, what are you talking about? So these lawyers are saying to Jesus, you are reinterpreting it wrong, or you are interpreting it wrong. It's not so much as the theological statement is wrong, it's the way you understand that statement which is wrong. So they test him. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? That is a fundamental question that every one of us asks, not necessarily in the same language. What do you have to do to go to heaven? I would never talk, no, I would no longer talk like that. You would not expect me to talk like that. I learned better language. I mean, that's all theology is looking at it with contemporary language, not with the language of a child, as we all learned certain things. When I was a kid, I too had a guardian angel who sat next to me on the desk seat, all right? But in no way, when I was sitting on this, was there a guardian angel sitting next to me. Or maybe there was, but it wasn't a guardian angel, because the guardian angel, one thing that it stands for is some kind of presence of that which is spiritual, some kind of presence of the divine, a symbol of the care that God has for me. I firmly believe that God cares for me and for you. And I may not think that there are such things as angels, but the angel stands for me, for what that particular thing means. So often people say they left the faith. No, they didn't always leave the faith. They don't murder, they don't steal. But certain things they've given up on thinking about. Certain things should be given up. Thinking about that, struggling with them a little bit. But that's another talk. So, teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said to him, what is it written in the law? When in the New Testament, when a teacher of the law, when a lawyer asks Jesus a question about religion, chances are they're trying to trip him up. And invariably, Jesus turns the tables on them. Either he answers their question with another question, or as he does at the end of this story, he changes it all around and turns it upside down. He's not going to get caught, because he knows when he should allow himself to get caught, because he's not yet ready. He's not yet ready to be put to the cross. But there will come a time that he will allow them to take him into custody. And he will allow them to trip him up, or to use his language that appears that they're tripping him up, but not yet. So he says, what's written in the law? What do you read there? And the man said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. That comes right out of the book of Deuteronomy. This is a lawyer who knows his religion. And with your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And that comes right out of Leviticus, which is another book of the Old Testament. Love God and love neighbor. That didn't originate with the Christian church. That's very, very ancient Israel. And with all your soul and with all your strength and with him. You've given the right answer. Do this and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, that tells you on the lawyer. He's not asked, who is my neighbor? Who do I have to love? And Jesus replies, a man was and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed him by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. And then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an end, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, take care of him, and when I come back I will repay you whatever more you spend. That's the end of the story, and then Jesus says, which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell into the hand of the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do thou likewise. That is a rich, rich story. All right, a man's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. What we have, Jericho's not too far from Jerusalem, so it's not a long trip. It's not long away, because most people are traveling by foot. So they do more foot walking than we do. All right. And I don't know why I did that, because I don't need the map. Anyway, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. You always go up to Jerusalem. If you are traveling north, you're going up to Jerusalem. If you're traveling south, you're going up to Jerusalem. If you're traveling west, you're going up to Jerusalem. If you're traveling east, you go up to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the highest point from which you meet God. Jerusalem is not even the highest hill in the city, but it's symbolic. So you go up to Jerusalem because that's where you meet God in a very special place. And the reason is because it's the highest point. So God does not have so far to come down. For them, heaven is up there. For us, not. Right? So goes up to Jerusalem. It tells us something about this man. We don't know. This is the man who was beat up. We don't know much about him. But he's going up to Jerusalem. Okay? I take that back. I'm sorry. The man was going down from Jerusalem. So the chances are he was at the temple. That's important to remember. Though the text doesn't exactly say it, chances are he was at the temple. Down from Jerusalem to Jericho, fell into the hand of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went around, leaving him dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road. What is a priest? And why is it important? What's a priest doing on that road? Why is it important that the storyteller says that if the man was a priest? Chances are, though the text doesn't exactly say it, but chances are he's going up to Jerusalem. And when a priest goes up to Jerusalem, again, chances are he's going up there because he has some religious duties to fulfill. We know that there are 12 tribes. And I would ask you, why 12? And the answer is because there are 12 months. And each tribe had its turn to minister in the temple. So chances are, see, all of this is presumed, but chances are that he's going up to the temple because it's his month to function, to do the kind of work that priests do, to help the people with their prayers, to help the people with their sacrifices. So he's going up to Jerusalem. He's going, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. By law, if you see a dead body or if you see somebody beat up, you are responsible for taking care of that body. If it's dead, you are responsible for seeing that the funeral is taken care of, or getting the undertaker to take care of the funeral. If it's somebody beat up, you are responsible for taking care of him. If he's dead and you touch a dead body, you become ritually unclean. But you don't know if he's dead or not. It doesn't say he's dead. He's all beat up. But the priest can't take a chance. Because if the man is dead and he touches a dead body, then he cannot go up to Jerusalem and function. Which means he'll have to wait for another whole year before he can go up to Jerusalem. So what does he do? He makes believe he doesn't see it. Some of us have developed that ability to an art form. Oh, I didn't see you. Avoid somebody because we want to avoid them, but we do it in such a way that nobody can accuse us of avoiding them. That's what the priest is doing here. He even crosses so that he doesn't have to have anything to do with the dead body if it's dead. Now, if it's not dead, if it's a man who's beat up, all he's got to do is make sure he's taken care of, and then he can go up. But he doesn't know. So likewise, a Levite. A Levite is somebody of the tribe of Levi who also functions at the temple. Not exactly the same way that a priest does, but also functions at the temple. Same thing. He sees the guy there. Is he dead or is he alive? Am I responsible taking care of him? If so, I will. But I can't be sure, because like the priest, if I touch that body, I become ritually unclean. And I have to wait until next year, because it is a privilege to spend a month functioning within the temple. It's a great privilege. It could be the greatest privilege in their life, every year having that opportunity. So what do? Both of them sort of pass by as if they don't see him. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. Who's a Samaritan? What we have here again okay, years before, earlier, maybe 1,400 years before Jesus' time, the Babylonians, in the Fertile Crescent, the Babylonians pushing over came about this far down into part of Israel that was settled by a couple of the tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob. And I don't want to get too much into the history, but there was war, and Israel was divided between the north and the south. The north was called Israel, the south was called Judah. The Babylonians conquered, and in the ancient Near Eastern world, in order to make sure that the next generation does not know any nationalism, they would take as prisoners the defeated people and resettle them someplace else in the world where they had also conquered someone. And then they would take conquered people and settle them in Israel or settle them in Judah, wherever they also had conquered people. And in that way, national national pride did not grow up for the next generation. The people who were settled here up in the north are the children of the children of the people who settled up north are the Samaritans. There was intermarriage between some people of the land and some of the settled people. And the Israelites considered them bastard Israelites because they were not full-blooded Israelites. So, and they hated them. In fact, we even have Jesus doing this. Rather, when he's going from the north to the south to the temple, instead of going through Samaria, he goes into the land of the Canaanites, because you don't want to have anything to do with the Samaritans. But here we have someone who is not full-blooded, and this is the one who shows compassion, the Samaritan. Listen to the story. A Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. And what does he do? He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. And then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. Remember what I said about hospitality. They're perfect strangers to the one who owns that land, the innkeeper. And the innkeeper then will take care of this beat-up man while the Samaritan goes and does his business, then comes back and pays whatever is left over for the fee. Now, the Samaritan is a foreigner. He's mixed blood. He's not even pure blood. He's a foreigner of mixed blood. He has no care whether that man is dead or alive but beat up. That's not the issue. It's a human being. I take care of him. It happens to be that the man is alive, but he took care of him. Don't think that the Samaritan is too good, though. The priest and the Levite had a lot to lose. The Samaritan has nothing to lose. However, what he has to lose is his own money with which he uses to take care of the man who was beat up, almost to death. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him. And when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Remember what I said about hospitality. You had to have that kind of trust in other people, which then you would be able to benefit from when you were moving. Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend. So that's the end of the story, but then Jesus asks the lawyer, "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" At the beginning of the story, Jesus asked a question. Well, actually, the lawyer asked a question. Who is my neighbor? Right? Who is my neighbor? In other words, who am I supposed to love? Because the question was, love your neighbor. Well, who's my neighbor? At the end of the story, Jesus turns the question around. He doesn't ask, who is my neighbor? He does not, or the man does not answer the question, who is my neighbor? The question was, who am I supposed to love? Here, the question Jesus asks is, who is the one who does the loving? Not who is the one am I supposed to love? So the neighbor is the one who loves, not the one who is loved. He turns it around. He catches the lawyer. Again, as an example of how Jesus uses the tradition for his own interpretation of the tradition. That was the issue with Jesus. Not that he didn't know the tradition. He interpreted it from an entirely different point of view. And the point of view from which he always interpreted the tradition is love and graciousness, not law, not obedience. It was love and graciousness. Because when we love, we obey the law. In fact, we do more than obey. When we love someone, we all have loved someone by this time in our lives. When we genuinely love, there's nothing that we would not do for the one we love. It's easy to follow a pattern of behavior. It's easy to obey laws. Uncomfortable, annoying, yes, but easy. At least you know what to do. But to be open and loving when you don't feel like it, or that person that you love dearly just annoys you. And the love, to love someone does not mean that they'll never annoy you. It means that you'll never hold it against them when they do. So this is a story about hospitality, really exaggerated hospitality, because don't forget the Samaritan is a perfect stranger to this man. And this man is a perfect stranger to the Samaritan. Gotta watch what time it is. So when we talk about hospitality then, do you, as I must ask, do I have that kind of care for others? That without even asking, it's a question of, how can I serve you? What do you need? Think of the people around the world. Are they even welcome? Are they even welcome? Forget about their needs. Are they even welcome? In a very real sense, our world is going through transformation. Going through a transformation. Not just a destruction. But again, I mean, the season doesn't help us, but the season of spring would help us, to talk about this during spring. Because the seed cracks up, breaks open, and then something brand new, something transformed. And where did it come from? Came from the seed. But in order, the seed had to break open. Before there is resurrection, there is crucifixion. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And we are called to love the one you would least expect is a decent human being. Foreigners. People that we have cast out. And we have. We've cast people out. We turn our back on them. We avoid them. But, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yeah. We avoid them. So when we talk then, as I say, when we talk about hospitality, open up your understanding of hospitality. It doesn't simply mean you go over to your friend's house for a meal, as nice as that would be. It's rather that your house, speaking metaphorically, that your house is an open door, and that whoever crosses your path is welcome and gets whatever they need that you have to offer. Now that's metaphoric, but that's what it means to be love. To be love. That's what we are called to be. The love of God in the world. And this particular story, that's chapter 10 of Luke's gospel. This story tells us, what we are supposed to be, how we are supposed to live with each other. Not the people like like the priest and the Levite. Doing church work was more important to them. Making sure that they were ritually clean so that they could do a good thing. It's not that they wanted to do something that was evil, a good thing. But there is always something more important than doing that good thing. It's taking care of another human being, even one you would rather not take care of because they're not one of us. Or they may be worse than not being one of us. They might be ritually unclean. Think about this. It's a very, very strong story, a real challenge for us. And also think about the meaning when or if you ever look at these principles, these values, hospitality and tradition, being open to the other, being open to the other's point of view. Pope Francis began something shortly before he died, and that is encouraging people and encouraging the church to enter into conversation, into dialogue. But that means enter into conversation, not with people, not only with people who think the way you do, but people who think differently. There are times when I must admit, I wish that I had the opportunity, or maybe I haven't taken or looked for the opportunity enough. But I had the opportunity to discuss with somebody who holds a different political point of view than I do, and hear from another point of view what they think about what's going on in our country. But it's hard to find someone who thinks differently and doesn't want to punch you in the nose, or that you wouldn't like to punch in the nose. It's hard to find that. But that's what we're being asked to do. That's hospitality, to be open to another point of view. And I hate to think that we might have to wait for a couple of years before that there is a gradual change of point of view. Most commentators would say, we're not going to see it for at least another generation. That means your generation. Your generation. Good luck. Well, look what we've left you. But also, it could mean that it's breaking down. That kind of thinking is breaking down so that something new can really come forth. So, any questions or comments or observations?
I have one.
Yes.
Here's the...
As you were talking about the priest and the Samaritan, the thought came to my mind is that sounded like meritocracy to me. So we say here at Marian to our students, work hard, get an education. Ultimately, you'll become a better version of yourself. And I think all of that's true, and that's really hard to argue against.
That's right.
Meritocracy.
That's right.
And what I'm hearing what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that perhaps our embrace of the meritocracy is lending those types of behaviors that prevents us from being a better version of ourselves, that we associate and love people that are more like us as compared to others that didn't go to school, that didn't work hard, and they're left with their lot in life. Is my interpretation of your remarks, is that what you're trying to say, or did I miss the mark?
Yes. Very simply, yes, that's what I'm trying to, that's one thing. I hadn't thought about it to do it, but that's what, exactly. the whole question of, merit, that you get merit, whether that be understood from a religious point of view. Let me just say this. You got to remember, I didn't focus on that particular thing. You may have heard it because I spoke very positively about being open and generous and not think of what are you going to get back. I didn't emphasize that. But I don't want anyone to go away thinking that there is never in the scriptures, and could very well be in this particular text as well. I think I'd have to look hard to find it. But there is in the scripture the value of meritocracy, right? But one story can't say everything. But you're right. I mean, I wasn't saying, as so many of us learned that our religion is do the right thing and you get the merit, or do the right thing and you'll get to heaven, or do the right thing and how you want to understand the reward you get for being or doing the right thing. Right. So I was underscoring, for want of a better term, generosity. The word was hospitality, which is a sense of generosity. Now, do you want to say anything else about that?
It's a start, sister.
Oh, okay. For you or for me?
For me, for sure.
Okay, good. Well, but you're right, I did not talk at all about meritocracy. I spoke much more obviously about hospitality and the open-heartedness of hospitality. But that is not to say that within the tradition, the whole notion of merit, is not valid. Of course it is. Depends upon the context in which we're talking about it. Okay? All right, anyone else? Yes?
Do you feel...
She's coming with a mic, but try. All right.
You've been teaching a lot of influential people for a very long time, and I am curious if you think we have made progress on hospitality. If you think back to the pre-Vatican II, post-Vatican II, up through now, even though we have political things happening now that maybe we want to tie to handing down the religion, the faith, how do you encapsulate what has happened over the last 50, 60 years? And do you think we are making progress as a church and perhaps as a society? And I don't know if you can bring those two together.
Let me say something about pre-Vatican. Just as we had different theology before the Second Vatican Council, we really did not engage with our non-Catholic cohorts. Much less even with Jews. And in fact, with Jews, from their point of view, anybody who was not Jewish was dangerous, which is the same thing today as well. But we did not engage. I mean, they were Protestant, and you did not interact. If there was any ecumenical conversation, it was, in the stratosphere of high theology. And my understanding was there was very little of that. The change since the Second Vatican Council, which was, as I said, 65 something, I think, is remarkable. But that's not to say that there wasn't change going on. Some of the most exciting, which I found exciting when I was a young nun, which was before, the Vatican Council took over. The whole Roman Catholic intellectual tradition what Graham Greene and Francois Mauriac, when I was in high school, I read those authors. Graham Greene, Francois Mauriac, Leon Bloy, all of those, the Catholic intellectual tradition. And that was before the council broke open, which means that it was happening, but not everybody knew about it. And then, so that when it did happen, there were a lot of people that were ready to run with it. All right, now there's very little, for the average, churchgoer, if you will, or the average citizen, that they never think about, religious fighting about theology. I have not heard any of that for years, decades. So, I mean, that is not even, a thought. An ecumenical dialogue is exciting. It's fascinating, to hear how people look at what Eucharist is, or how people understand, what life, the next life is, and also how do you deal with the stories in Genesis about creation when we have accepted science with cosmology? And if there's anything shooting out into heaven, it's not, shooting out into the heavens, into the sky. It's not somebody going to heaven, it's somebody going to Mars. So how do you deal with the notion that heaven is up there? And that's not an issue anymore. So to that extent, yes, it's significant change. The problem is whether or not we who are citizens of the United States, we who are Democrats or Republicans or independents, we can stand in awe of all the theological insights that we have, and our ability to deal, with our Lutheran friends down the street. But we can't talk to our brother or sister, blood relative, if they're not the same political party.
Do we as a church have a responsibility to try to pull that together?
I guess we do. The issue is, and we should ask, and every once in a while there's an answer. What are the bishops of the United States doing, not necessarily about, the political situation, but the immigrant situation? I mean, when an institution like Columbia University cannot have DEI, so Monday through Friday, there's no such thing as DEI, and then you go to church on Sunday, whether if you're Catholic or any kind of Christian, and what do they talk about? Diversity, equality, inclusivity. That's what Christianity is all about. And our leaders have a serious responsibility. And our local pastors. The church is for people, not for singular person.
So where's the chasm between Sunday's homily and all of our good things, and then what happens when we take DEI out on Monday and Tuesday?
Are you in a position to answer that question?
I think it's lack of dialogue. I think we don't talk to each other. And I think that's what you said is Democrats and Republicans. I think it would be great to put people in a room. People are afraid to bring it up because they're afraid they're going to get punched. And so they don't talk about their differences.
Yeah.
And I think we have to talk about our difference. I think I love what you said to say about hospitality. I haven't thought about it in terms of hospitality, but it really is, I have my sheephead club over. We don't talk about politics. We talk about religion. We've got Methodists and Lutherans and Catholics all playing sheephead together. We talk about our religions, but heaven forbid if we bring up politics because it wouldn't be good, or we're afraid to. I don't think it would be bad because I think we love each other and respect each other.
Let's hope that we do. But, I would not want to ask for a show of hands, but I'll be willing to bet there are a lot of people in this room right now who cannot talk to their siblings. what has happened to us? And that, all kinds of questions. But that's a whole question of hospitality. I mean, there are some slick ads, on the television, about what's going on in our country. And I think, I don't understand it that way. And I like to think I'm a relatively intelligent person. I did not know that these, I'd like to know, explain to me why you can hold that point of view given this circumstance. And I'd be willing to bet that they would want to ask me the same question. If we are open to it. Sometimes you want to run away and hide. And I don't know what else to say. But yeah, you touched it right on the nose. So it's up to us to make a change. Anyone else?
All right, seeing none, I want to say a huge thank you to Sister Dianne for speaking to us today about hospitality and tradition. Thank you so much. And I think it speaks volumes to the incumbent call upon all of us to really take this to heart this Lent and really contemplate in what way can we move forward and make a difference in that hospitality. I think that touches on the community value, the core value here. We can't be community if we can't even open our doors and our arms to each other. So I think that's a great message for us to contemplate and keep thinking on. Thank you so much. So if you don't want to miss out next time, it's March 31st, and her topic will be Sacramental Vision, Mystery. So we invite you to come back here on March 31st for that next talk. And in the meantime, if you have any interest, we are also offering a soup and substance program on Mondays at noon in the Science Building, which is right next door, just in the kind of gathering area in the lobby. You're welcome to come if you'd like. And we're going to be doing that not next week because it's spring break, not next week, but when we gather again the following week. So thank you so much to everybody. There are flyers and reminders of things, and Sister Sharon's got a thing. And also, I forgot, Agape Latte, Tuesday, March 10th.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Dianne. I just want you to know a follow-up to that question. The Sisters of St. Agnes have some groups that they gather called Conversations of the Heart. So if you are interested, contact the front desk and they'll put you in touch with when the next series is, where we actually bring together individuals who have differences, political differences, and learn how to have these conversations with each other. So we'd be very open as we start the next session, okay? Thank you. So just contact the front desk of the CSA and we'll put you in touch with that information. Thank you.
Thank you all.